Yo, and welcome back to Creeps and Crimes
Podcast.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Morgan. Happy Thursday and happy episode 219.
219. I'm feeling crazy.
Feeling crazy.
So sorry I got on to you guys last week.
Everyone was so funny, though.
No, everyone was being hilarious. I loved you guys turning yourselves in.
They're like, not a bot, also I listened. Or I didn't listen and I'm red-faced.
I saw someone that said, in my defense, my family's doing Thanksgiving today. So I saved you guys to listen to while I was cooking. So I'm technically okay.
Yeah, that
makes sense. Okay, we'll prove that.
Yeah, I'm still fucking sick. So my voice is shot.
Oh, they didn't hear. Patreon heard you when you were sick.
Patreon, I was sick last week. So I'm still sick. Sorry about that.
Literally the day after we recorded 218, Morgan, not even the day, 2 days later, because we recorded that on Tuesday. Thursday, we have to record Patreon and
down bad.
Like sudden onset.
Seriously, sudden onset symptoms right here in this chair.
Right here, right there.
I was like, I can't even lift my head up.
She literally, it was like sad, like listening to her go over the gates. I was like, just God, let her go down.
I was telling my mom about that time when I was like, yeah, I can take 2 Benadryl.
It'd be totally fine.
Like,
pass out in the middle of the episode because her eye kept swelling up. That was crazy.
It's hilarious.
I wonder if that's a public episode or a Patreon. Someone let us know in the comments.
Yeah, I don't remember. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. We had a good time, and then Nikki came into town. So on Saturday, I hit the town.
Nice. I saw that.
I had a little girls' night with me, Nikki, and Maddie, and Maddie's friend Miranda. We went and ate at Kefi, which is like modern Mediterranean, nicer place in Knoxville, which pretty good. I love Mediterranean food, but it's like served in tapas, so you're mainly getting absolutely drunk as hell eating like little bits of food. So like I don't even know what the food tastes like. It was delicious, but like I had to get there.
I've never been
You're gonna
there.
be so proud of this.
What? You were there early?
Reservations were at 7:45. Jesus Christ, all my friends' names being Eminem is so tragic. Even my cats. So Nikki's plane got delayed, so she didn't end up landing until 7, and she had a bag. So she didn't even get in the car with Maddie from Alcoa to start heading towards Kefi, which is downtown Knoxville. As she's like rushing over, she's changing in the car. Well, they didn't even leave the airport until like 7:30. So I was ready because it was the Saturday after Black Friday, which means all the sales were going on. And as I was like thinking about what I was going to wear, I was like, you know what I need a good pair of like fitted, but still like, trendy jeans. So I went to Target and all of their denim was 40% off.
No way.
I found, here's a hot take. Oh, this is crazy. You're going to freak out when I tell you what I did. I bought low rise boot cut.
Did you?
Yeah. And it transported me to the early 2000s.
Yeah, 2008.
And it was like, where are my knee-high Converse?
Need them now.
Where
are they?
Where are you? So I got black boot cut, low rise jeans. Black with like a gray black. Who am I? With a slit. I mean, I literally look like a Tumblr girl in them.
I love that.
I slayed. I wore the Skims t-shirt that we have, and I blew out my hair, slayed that.
You know, I still can't find my Skims t-shirt.
What?
Yeah.
I wonder, it's not in mine because I've just done all my laundry.
Yeah, I have no idea where it's at.
It might be in the back of my car.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's 100% where it's at. So this is crazy. I was like so happy when I was doing it, and I told Logan, I was like, do you see what I did differently? And he's like, you have your hair straight. I'm like, first off, it's blown out, and second off, I had on blue eyeshadow.
Did you?
And I did it all the way up to the brow. Like I went full, like I felt so Britney in my jeans. I had to carry it all the way up.
Go all the way through.
So then afterwards we went to Brother Wolf so we could have a few espresso teenies. Also, I realized I'm too old for espresso teenies because that sugar in it from my little dirty, filthy slut of a martini to an espresso martini now ruins me. Like,
really?
Ruined me. I couldn't even get through the second one.
What sugar do they put in there?
I know it's more so about the fact that there's sugar in it. Like I've figured that out about myself. I was not feeling okay, but we ran into Richard because he works, over there.
Oh shit.
Yeah. He's like, he literally has been working there for a year and keeps getting promoted, like doing so good. And so I was going to text him because I thought he might have been working and be like, yo, I'm up front. can I send you a drink? We get up to the bar, we get in, and I'm about to pull up my phone to text him, and Nikki is standing in front of me with her back against the bar ordering our drinks, and she turns around, she goes, oh my God, Richard's behind you. So I go over to Richard, I'm hugging on him, We sit down at a table, we're chatting. He's showing me his new tattoos. It was just so good to see Richard. And one of our listeners comes up, and this is the same listener that you had an interaction with in Petco.
No way.
Yes.
Okay, I know. Yes. My first time.
She comes up to me and she's like talking to me. The reason she realized I was there was because someone with her was like, hey, do you know that girl? I want to talk to her. She says, yeah, I know that girl, and she's married. And the guy goes, is that her boyfriend or her husband with her? And she goes, no, that is not. And then I started thinking after the fact, I was like, I should have explained that is Richard, and I didn't on the jump.
That's funny.
So Bestie, you know who you are. That is my really good friend Richard. I don't know why.
That's just Richard from college.
Yeah, that's Richard. But yeah. So anyways, that was really fun. And then we danced at Hannah's for 30 minutes because they were playing Chapel Roan and Sabrina Carpenter, and it was dead as a doornail in there because everyone was still gone. I had the best time. We got too hot. We walked to the car and we left.
No wagon wheel.
No wagon.
You're telling me Nikki was in town.
No, babes.
And you guys didn't
We
go
were in
wagon.
a Sabrina Carpenter mood.
Good for you.
Yeah. We were walking by and we heard please, and we're like, oh, going back. Yeah.
Please.
And then as we walked in, they're mixing it with HOTTOGO.
Incredible
I was
DJing.
like, oh my God.
Here we are.
We're here.
I was gonna like try to put you on a song, but I already saw that you reposted it on TikTok.
Messy. Yeah, I love Messy.
Lola Young.
Yeah. That's been my anthem.
I knew
for
it would
2
be.
weeks.
I knew it would be.
It's been on rotate like loop for 2 weeks now.
Yeah, and I love her little British accent in it too.
Me too.
The whole lot.
Yeah, so good.
It is good.
I hate the fucking. Oh, and another thing, I already told Patreon when I got on a phone call with them yesterday through our group chat. I'm watching my mouth.
Are you? Mm-hmm. Not swearing.
I mean, I'm going to still swear, but I'm just like gonna be more picky about it because okay, so you know, like when you have. First off, we'll get to this. Tell me how your Thanksgiving was.
No, pause. We just talked downstairs for an hour and a half, and I think she said fuck 12 times.
900 times. Yeah.
Okay.
But on mic, I'm being better.
Okay.
Not in purse.
Curious to know why. Second Thanksgiving was good. I was sick as a fucking dog.
She was.
There was like 9,000 Thanksgivings, and then we had Sarah's baby shower on Saturday, so that was good.
It was. It looked so cute. Yeah, the little 3 steers with the quiches on them.
Her
was
sister-in-law.
So
she owns Sips and Sweets in Zelienople, Pennsylvania. It's a little bakery.
So she did the catering for it.
She did all of the food.
It looked delicious.
It was so fucking good. At that point, I was a little pied out.
Yeah,
but it was so good.
Pie.
And then my little brother drugged me to the casino.
You know you wanted to go. Don't even joke.
I didn't.
You wanted to go a little bit.
And they wanted to bowl, and then they're like, they wanted to play slots and blackjack. Well, Aaron wasn't with me at the time, so it was me, my mom, my older brother, my little brother, and his girlfriend. We go to one slot machine. My mom is always looking for a buffalo, or she says, or something with a husky that's calling to me. That's my mom's.
I love that
motto.
man.
So I'm like, well, I want Wheel of Fortune. So I walk around the whole casino. I find Wheel of Fortune. I sit down. I put a 20 in. I lose my $20 and I'm not even kidding you, 45 seconds.
No.
45 seconds, it's gone. I'm like, all right, I'm going to Lexi's to see Gio.
I'm done.
And my mom sits down on my machine, puts 20 in, wins 180. the hit
one that's
right
calling
after
to
mine.
me.
I'm like, are you fucking kidding me on my machine, bitch?
Yeah.
And I had already walked out and she sent me a picture. She's like, looks like you left too soon. I'm like, I'm done.
Beth Ann. That's enough.
I'm literally with Gia.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Got to go.
Got to go. That's
I did
hilarious.
see her. She was so fucking big and
so
talking
cute.
and so cute.
Oh my God. The pictures of her sass that I've seen on the story recently have literally been making me like actually audibly cackle.
Yeah, she's so funny. Okay, so tell me why you're not swearing. Oh wait, and then yesterday we got stuck Sunday on our way home we got stuck in a terrible snowstorm.
Literally,
it snowed.
What did you say? 5 out of 7 hours.
5 out of 7 hours. It was snowing.
That's crazy.
The tunnels in Virginia were shut down, so we had to go a back route, and it rerouted us, but it rerouted every other person on the road. So we were on a 1-lane like left turning red light, and we were backed up for like probably 30 minutes. And then I'm not even kidding you. We're pulling into Bristol. There's a Bristol, Virginia, and a Bristol, Tennessee. Right? It's the city that splits the Virginia-Tennessee line. And it's still snowing. And I'm like, Aaron, it might be snowing in Knoxville. I'm going to text Taylar. I cross over. There's snow on the ground. Welcome to Tennessee. Welcome to the great state of Tennessee. Green grass. I'm like, how? It's like a dome.
It is. It's crazy.
I was like, I'm not texting her.
It snowed last night.
Oh, I did see that on Facebook.
You see that? Yeah, it snowed last night. Logan was coming home from the gym, calls me screaming. I literally thought he was got in a car accident.
It's snowing.
It's snowing. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Take a picture. And he's like, or you could walk outside. I'm like, I'm looking outside. I see it. But so you can remember.
I don't think it snowed at my house, actually.
It didn't?
No.
It was like coming down. Did you see Logan's post?
Well, I saw another girl had posted on Facebook and her like grass was covered.
Yeah. Right. North, like up above us, just barely. It was like sticking on the parking lot cement, which that says a lot.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That says a lot. So guys, we talked for 20 minutes and I'm going to move the second half of this intro as the TFU section at the end of this. And we'll pick up about why I'm not cussing as much. I'm not like getting rid of it. I'm just like taking a pause.
I think she's already said like a couple.
I've said it like 900 times already, but that's whatever. It's fine. So anyways, we will get to the episode now.
If you're driving, throw that shit on cruise control.
If you got a glass, pour that shit up.
And let's get creepy.
Okay, Morgie Poo, what do you have for us today?
Today, I am talking about the House of Guinness, the Guinness family curse.
Let's go.
Yeah, so the Guinness family legacy began with Arthur Guinness, who founded the Guinness Brewery in 1759.
Love him.
Arthur Guinness was born in Ardclough, near Selbridge, County Kildare, in 1725. Arthur was the first of 5 children born to Richard and Elizabeth Guinness. Now, his exact date of birth is disputed by historians. Some sources say that he was born on September 24th, 1725, but the Guinness Company declared in 1991 formally that their founder's date of birth was actually September 28th.
I love that it was so much drama that even the company had to get involved.
They're like, okay, it's 1991.
We're tired of the slander.
200 years ago. His birthday's 4 days later than what you all are saying it is. You're incorrect.
You're disrespecting Sir Arthur Guinness by saying that it's 4 days earlier.
Exactly.
I mean, slay.
Arthur's father, Richard, was employed by Arthur Price, who was a bishop of the Church of Ireland. And in August 1742, Arthur Guinness's mother, Elizabeth, died at the age of 44 when Arthur was only 18 years old. Later that year, Arthur decided to join working with his father and was employed by Arthur Price, the bishop. And upon the bishop's death in 1752, both Arthur and his father inherited money from the bishop's will. So, like, I guess the guy had nobody except for these two, so they got a big chunk of money.
Wow. Thanks, Bishop.
Yeah. On October 19th, 1752, Richard Guinness married his second wife, Elizabeth Clare. She was a widow herself, and Elizabeth had taken over the White Hart Inn upon her first husband's death. So once they got married, Richard and his children, including Arthur Guinness, worked at the public house after the wedding. So the public house is a pub. It's a pub. Arthur then continued working at his stepmother's public house, aka the pub, before founding his own brewery in Leixlip. In 1759, there was a financial crisis that created this huge abundance of affordable property in the area. So Arthur Guinness moved to Dublin and purchased an abandoned brewery from the Ransford family. This first brewery, which he acquired in September, was a 3-story building that ran from the street to the River Liffey. The river provided him with easy access to water for brewing and for power, and then barley was grown in neighboring farms. It was really easy for him to get hops brought in from Dublin because Leixlip sat along the main Dublin Galway road. I guess you might be familiar with that. A road that runs through Dublin and Leixlip. I have no idea where we are, but Taylar, lives, breathes, and dies in Ireland. So
yeah, I can't wait to go back.
But the origin of Guinness's yeast is unknown, but people believe it was likely from Kildare and possibly even originated from the White Hart Inn, which was his stepmother's public house, the pub. This was first originally an ale brewery, but Arthur Guinness began producing porter in 1778, and by 1799, production of ale stopped because he had such a huge popular hit with his darker beer. Beer. I'm so sorry. I know I'm not even pronouncing anything right. Beer.
She's just talking.
Yeah. With his darker beer. Why am I saying beer weird?
No, you're saying it right.
Beer.
I think you're just saying it so much, and you're also using an accent that is not yours.
Well, I'm trying to talk
beer.
I'm trying to talk from a place where I don't have mucus, and it's not my voice.
Beer.
Guinness itself, as a beer, popped off, and so did the family name.
Who is this girl sitting beside me? I don't even know her.
And so did the family name. They were practically royalty to Ireland. They had a prominent presence in society, but with that came a spotlight. And over the years, this pattern of publicly tragic incidents started to come to light, fueling rumors of a Guinness family curse. Starting with Arthur Guinness.
No.
Yeah. Arthur, in his peak, married Olivia Whitmore, and the two of them had 21 children.
I'm sorry. I was not expecting 21.
No, but Arthur and Olivia outlived half of their children because 11 died before they reached childhood. 11 kids. Now, do remember, this is the 18th century, which was a time where life expectancy was much lower and the child mortality rate was much higher.
Yeah, it was
so
like hard
maybe
to keep a kid alive.
This wasn't the start of the curse, but it gets you thinking, because at this time standard, Arthur Guinness actually lived a very rare and long life, dying at the age of 78. Ooh. This was more than double the average life expectancy back then. You lived till you were 50.
That was it.
You're old.
Your midlife crisis was 25.
Exactly. Of course, this sparks rumors, and maybe it was the start of the curse, that some alleged witchcraft took place where it was a child's life or a prolonged life for Arthur Guinness and his riches.
I was so not going there.
Well,
I was like, it's clearly the beer. It's keeping him alive. Like
it's the beer. But again, that's just rumors. It wasn't until the 20th century, and that's really unfortunate.
That is really sad.
It wasn't until the 20th century that a pattern of tragedies in the Guinness family really started to become public. In the late 1920s, early 1930s, Guinness family members caught themselves in a scandal.
Oh no.
I almost said effing scandal, but I didn't. Did you see my mouth?
I saw it coming.
In a scandal. According to the History Press, Brian Guinness, who is the son of Lord Moyne, who we will talk about in a second because he's also down this tragedy line, who is the great-great-great-grandson. So Brian Guinness is the great-great-great-grandson of Arthur Guinness.
Okay.
Found himself intertwined with one of the infamous Mitford sisters, Diana Mitford. The two married in 1929 and they had 2 kids, 2 boys. Brian and Diana were well-known members of the Bright Young People, or the Bright Young Things, which was this group of like young socialites in London in the 1920s. Like you were peak elite.
The Bright Young Things.
The top elite. Yeah, you were in the Bright Young Thing.
I want to be the Bright Young Thing.
The Bright Young Thing. These two were the it couple of the elite back then. But in 1932, Diana met a man named Oswald Mosley, and she began to have an affair with Oswald.
Ooh.
He was not a good guy.
His name's Oswald.
For example, he left Westminster, deserted the party that he was the MP of, and founded the British Union of Fascists. This is peak World War, by the way.
Yeah.
World War II.
Yeah.
This affair comes to light. Diana leaves Brian Guinness and then has a very public wedding at the Berlin home of Joseph Goebbels with a very prominent guest in attendance, Adolf Hitler.
Oh, Morgan.
Who gave them, as a wedding gift, a signed photograph of himself. A selfie. He gives him a selfie.
He gives him a selfie. Got it.
So obviously this does not look good for the Guinness family. And it really didn't look good when Oswald Mosley and Diana get thrown in prison without trial after the war, specifically for Diana being the liaison between Hitler and her husband. And then MI5 comes forward saying that she is, quote, wildly ambitious, a danger to the public, and more dangerous than her husband. Also, during this time, side note, they did have 4 children together. 2 of them were babies. One was like 11 months old. The other one was 18 months old. Straight to the orphanage. No one...
I hope they shaved her head in the street when they picked her up.
So it took a couple years for the Guinness family, especially Brian, to recover from the scandal publicly and probably emotionally and mentally.
Yeah.
Because that's fucking
crazy. The Guinness
crazy.
family is so hurt.
And also, she did come forward, and I didn't talk much about her, but like you could go on about Diana. She comes forward, Lady Diana.
No, ma'am, that is not your name.
She comes forward and she's like, I'm not a racist, but I do believe
I'm not a racist, but you're done. Yeah, you're done.
But racists should be kept separately to end wars.
Dumbass.
From half of Europe.
Dumbass.
Yeah.
Dumbass alert.
And then she writes this big autobiography and she was like,
no one wants to read it.
MI5 is literally just making me sound bad. I'm not even kidding you. She's like, that's just them trying to rip my name down.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
100% you are correct.
But they were only in jail for 3 years.
That's it?
Yeah.
After literally being friends
and then they were released and they moved to France.
Okay, so they were like, you have to get the hell out.
Yeah, they were like, you can't be here.
Yeah, they're
especially here in London. You're not
like
going to be
100%. You cannot be here.
Okay, so like I said, it took Brian a little bit to recover, probably a long bit, but he couldn't seem to catch a break because just a few short years after this, his father, Lord Moyne, who I mentioned earlier, was assassinated. Born in 1880, Walter Edward Guinness, or Lord Moyne, was the great-great-grandson of Arthur Guinness. It was a friend of Winston Churchill.
Churchill? Churchill?
I'm struggling to even breathe.
You know, we just talked about Churchill. They just heard it from American Dollar Princess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a friend of Winston Churchill, and he was the British minister resident of the Middle East. On November 6, 1944, when Lord Moyne was pulling into the driveway of his residence in Cairo, Egypt, with his chauffeur, secretary, and the ADC, 2 young men were spotted near the entrance. The men attacked the group, shooting the chauffeur in the chest, and fired 3 shots at Moyne through the window of the car.
Oh, God.
While the driver died instantly, Moyne was taken to the hospital and operated on before dying later that day at the hospital. The suspects were caught while running away from the crime scene, and the assassins were identified to be 2 members of the underground terrorist organization. I have no idea how to even begin to pronounce that, but it means Fighters for the Freedom of Israel.
Okay.
The assassination of Lord Moyne was both politically and historically significant, and it was the first high-profile tragedy of the Guinness family, and it was only followed by more tragedy.
Oh my God.
Born in 1945, Patrick, or Tara Brown, was the son of Unog Guinness and heir to the Guinness Brewery million-pound fortune.
Wow.
According to the Rolling Stone, he was a central part of London's social elite in the 60s. And also, didn't even try to begin to break down the family tree.
No. They had 21 kids.
Taylar, I'm not kidding you. I was scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling till you get to the bottom of it.
21 kids.
I'm like, I don't even know where this begins. I don't even know how to read it. I'm sorry.
Genetic genealogy is what we need right now.
Yeah.
Because what?
Someone else fucking do it. If you're interested, just Google search it.
They already have it on ancestry.com. That was a hyper focus of mine one day.
Tara's home was the hot spot for all types of artists, and the young heir became friends with people groups like the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, and more.
Oh, yeah.
On December 18th, 1966, Tara was speeding through southwest London in his light blue Lotus Elan sports car.
Lotus.
When he crashed into a parked van.
No.
He was rushed to the hospital and he died of his injuries shortly after. He was only 21 years old.
Oh.
The death of Tara Brown was still making headlines a month later. And this event began the inspiration for the Beatles song A Day in the Life. The beginning lyrics are literally like, I read the news today.
Yeah, I had no idea.
And it was as if this tragedy was following tragedy after tragedy for all the heirs to the family fortune. Trigger warning here, suicide. Heiress of the Guinness family fortune, Lady Henrietta Guinness, had many high-profile romances, but her first love started with a near-death experience. Henrietta and her boyfriend, Michael Beebe, the love of her life, were driving over the French Riviera when they went off the bridge and crashed Michael's flame red Aston Martin.
Oh, these cars.
They both survived, but were terribly injured.
Oh.
Later, after marrying 3 different men, and one of those actually was Michael Beebe, she ended up settling down and marrying Chef Luigi Marinori in Spoleto, Italy.
Wow.
And the 2 of them had a baby girl. Henrietta suffered from depression for the majority of her life. This was known by everybody, and she knew it. She was receiving treatment for it. But in 1978, at the age of 35, she threw herself off the Point Delle Torri Bridge, and she did not survive. She is known to have once said, quote, "If I had been poor, I would have been happy."
That's sad.
Yeah.
Because it does come with a lot. You know, and
really does.
we're not being poor rich people, but people that are born into it. A lot of those people go crazy because you're literally born into such a posh lifestyle that everything you do is wrong. You can't.
And all eyes on you.
All eyes on you all the time. You're going to ruin the family name. You're going to get this taken away from you. It's held over your head forever. And those people just go, some people can handle it.
Yeah.
some people can't. I don't know that I could, because like if I came from a posh, rich, wealthy family, no way in hell we could have this podcast.
Oh no. Like we were old money, like Vanderbilt.
We could never have this podcast. We would get taken out of the will so fast. Trust done.
In 1978 was only the start to a terrible year for the Guinness family. In addition to Henrietta's death in Italy, that same year 3 more Guinness descendants tragically passed away. So 4 total for the entire year. According to the Irish Times, John Guinness, who was a British diplomat, was involved in a car accident in 1978. While John, who was driving, survived, and I'm going to talk about him for a little bit, but like separately, like throughout, because I'm trying to follow a timeline right now.
Yeah.
While John, who was driving, survived, the accident was fatal for his 4-year-old son, Peter Guinness.
Oh, no.
Additionally, there is an unnamed 17-year-old Guinness family member who died from a suspected drug overdose. And because the family is so large, I just don't know if the name ever got out there.
Well, I'm sure they covered it up.
Yeah. And then a third descendant, Major Dennis Guinness, was also found dead in a cottage in Hampshire that same year, believed to be overdose. Unfortunately, these 2 overdoses would not be the last for the Guinness family.
Oh, no.
Because many of the members of the family were plagued with addiction. Drugs would end up becoming a major role in many of the tragedies to come. Maureen Guinness and her sisters Eileen and Unog, who was the mother of Tara Brown, were the great-great-granddaughters of the first Arthur Guinness. In society, these 3 were known as the Golden Guinness Girls.
Iconic.
They were charming, they were devious, they were beautiful. Maureen was more vain and obsessed than her sisters, specifically with social climbing. And this fell even into her elderly years. And because of this, her daughters often felt neglected and they would often act out. They were kind of the daredevils, the rebels.
I mean, they're the daughter of the Golden Guinness Girls.
Yeah. Maureen's oldest daughter, Lady Caroline Blackwood, was what the public would call a, quote, muse for artists. I didn't want to call her that, so we're going to let the public call her that.
Stunning.
Or the media. She married numerous musicians and she had many husbands. Caroline was an alcoholic who struggled to maintain her relationship, and this created an unstable family for her children. At only 18 years old, Natalia Sitkowitz, who's the daughter of Caroline and Israel Sitkowitz, died in 1978 after hitting her head and drowning in a bathtub while taking heroin.
No.
In 1986, the Guinness family faced more tragedy when Jennifer Guinness, the wife of John Guinness, whose son died in the car accident, Peter. John was the chairman of the Dublin Bank Guinness.
Right.
So he was fucking wealthy. And he was like, I think he was like the 3rd cousin to the chairman of the Guinness brewery, but he was in charge of the bank, nonetheless.
Yeah. He saw as the name.
Yeah. His wife, Jennifer, was the target of a kidnapping on April 9th, 1986. She was abducted by 3 masked men and had a ransom of $2.6 million. I want to cover this one separately, maybe with you, or I want Taylar to cover it because she'll do a better job than me. So I don't want to talk about it, but it is a fucking crazy kidnapping. Ordeal.
So this was after his son died?
Yes.
They come and abduct his daughter?
No, this is his wife.
Oh, they abduct
I did send
his
you the wrong
wife.
text.
Okay.
They abducted his wife.
Oh my God.
So they take his wife and she's gone for like 8 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy.
We will come back. We will
come back for it. So the same year that the wife gets abducted, 22-year-old Olivia Channon, heiress to the Guinness brewery and banking fortune, was at Oxford's Christ Church College celebrating the end of final exams. Olivia and basically every student on campus were out pouring one up for the end of the semester. And the next morning, Olivia was found dead, lying fully clothed on the bed in a friend's dorm room. According to the autopsy, Olivia had OD'd on heroin and alcohol, but this wasn't like her. 3 people were arrested and charged for supplying the heroin, including Olivia's best friend, Rosie Johnston, and her 3rd cousin, Sebastian Guinness.
Do you think they drugged her?
The judge, I have no idea. The judge reportedly told Sebastian that he had been weak and foolish, despite all of his privilege, and sentenced him to 4 months imprisonment for possession of cocaine and heroin. And this wasn't unusual at Oxford and probably still isn't today.
Yeah.
It was known as the wild party place for the kids of the elite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Oxford dorm room, that this is just a fun fact, not so fun fact. The Oxford dorm room that Olivia Channon was found in belonged to Count Gottfried von Bismarck, the son of Prince Ferdinand von Bismarck of Germany. He was charged and fined for possession of cocaine and amphetamine sulfate. And another fun fact, not so fun fact, Gottfried vowed, he was like, this incident scarred him so bad. He was like, I am done living it up. I'm never doing drugs again. I'm never having parties again. Like, she was found dead in his room. And this was obvious fucking lie because he was throwing sex parties at his flat that same year, making headlines all the way into 2006 when one of his guests fell to his death from his roof terrace. And then a year later, him, now Gotford, 44 years old, was discovered dead with a bruised arm. According to The Independent, he had injected himself with cocaine every hour for nearly 24 hours. And the examiner that announced his death said that Count Gottfried von Bismarck had the greatest amount of cocaine in any body that he had ever seen.
He was injecting it into his bloodstream.
Yeah.
For every hour.
For 24 hours.
Dude.
Yeah, so he was officially pronounced dead from a heart attack caused by overdose and drug dependency. But I mean, he's like the Prince of Germany's son. Like he was bad.
Yeah,
I've never even heard of him. They covered that shit up over here in America. I'm just letting y'all know.
He was so bad that we didn't even talk about him.
Yeah, I didn't know about that royal family.
That is crazy.
So 2 years after this, John Guinness, the one whose son died in the car accident, the one whose wife was kidnapped and held for ransom, dies after falling 500 feet off Snowdon Mountain in Wales, where he was climbing with his wife, his son, and his 3 friends, his other son.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's so bad,
That's fucking
Morgan.
tragic.
That is so bad because you can't, if you're climbing with someone, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You genuinely, like, what are you going to do? You're climbing. You can't jump off to go help them. You've got to, it takes like an hour to get down. And that's if you have, I'm sure they're rich. So they probably had like the nice harnesses and everything on that you can like move kind of quick. But when you're climbing, and you said in the White Mountains?
So the Snowdon Mountains in Wales.
Yeah.
But 500 feet. He fell 500
feet. Like that's, that's horrific.
Sickening, yeah.
That's awful.
In 1998, Sheelin Rose Nugent, who was the 31-year-old niece of Guinness heir Earl of Evog, died tragically on her mother's birthday. Sheelin was driving her horse-drawn carriage on this small road near her mom's house. And 98 horse-drawn carriage, you're probably like, what the fuck's going on?
Wait, yeah.
But this was her
I was like, what timeline?
It was her mother's birthday party, and she wanted the nieces and nephews and the younger cousins to ride on the carriage. It was like an event that was going to take place at her mother's.
I don't even know why.
Like, big horse girl.
I don't even know why I act shocked because let me tell you something. My first and second and third birthday, if we went and pulled up the footage, it's me with my redneck family on a horse-drawn carriage singing Rocky Top.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah. So she's taking this horse over to her mother's for her mother's birthday party. Like I said, she wanted to give a ride to her younger relatives. And on her way there, something had spooked her horse and sent it and her and the carriage barreling down the road, which was coming up on a bend.
Oh, no.
She was unable to regain control of her horse, and she was thrown out of the carriage and crushed to death beneath the wagon.
Oh.
According to witnesses, there was no other vehicles in the area, no bright lights or loud noises, and whatever scared the horse and caused the accident is still a mystery to this day.
And she's a horse girl. Like, she knows her horse.
That's what everyone's like. It's weird.
That's weird.
And lastly, well, for today, on July 31st, 2020, 19-year-old granddaughter of Benjamin Guinness, her name is Honor Eulith, was at the Guinness mansion in Sussex for a barbecue party with family and friends. She went for a little soak in the hot tub, and then she decided that she was gonna get out of the hot tub and go take a dip in the pool.
Right.
Probably too hot, pool cools you down right after the hot tub. A little bit later, she's not around, and her younger brother spots something at the bottom of the pool, and it was his sister Honor, unconscious. By the time she was pulled out, she was found to have a broken shoulder and brain injuries.
What?
She was rushed to the hospital where she was in a coma before passing away 6 days later. It's believed, according to the investigation, that she might have slipped, hit her head or hit her shoulder on something. Well, whether she was jumping in and like slipped and hit the edge of the pool,
or she dove in,
or hit the bottom of the pool,
because that is consistent.
She lost consciousness before she slipped underwater or while she was underwater.
That's so bad.
So no one knows why the family is cursed or if they are cursed, but the coincidences add up.
That's crazy.
And I mean, it is a large family, and when you bring it up to family members, they kind of shut it down, like the curse itself, stating that it's just a large family, and with any big family, they have their share of grief. And if you do look at the family tree, I mean, it is fucking huge. So you are going to have some tragedies in a family like that.
I mean, yeah, there's 21 kids.
But everyone, I'm just saying, everyone kind of thinks it started off with Arthur.
That's crazy.
He did something. I mean, like, that's more than the Kennedy
like
family.
He traded
the Kennedy family had a lot of death, but not like Guinness.
For a curse. Like, kind of like the Kardashians' beauty curse or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so I
good.
saw an article just on Facebook scrolling last week, and it was like the House of Guinness. And I loved the House of Gucci and the House of, what's Edgar Allan Poe's thing? The House of...
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's not here in my brain right now.
Netflix is releasing a House of Guinness, and it is produced by the ones who made Peaky Blinders. So I don't know if it's a documentary or if it's like a reenactment of the life of the Guinness family.
I'm down for both.
Me too.
I'm here. I'm
so
sat for both.
That's coming soon. And I was doing these notes and I was like, I don't even know why Ireland and Guinness didn't even pop in my head. But I was like, after I was done, I was like, Taylar, I should have saved this for St. Patty's, but it's too fucking soon. It's an hour before we're recording. Yeah. I'm not restarting anything.
Way too late. Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, we could keep the kidnapping for...
We could keep the kidnapping.
St. Patty's Day, because that'd be, you know, we've run out of dumb shit to talk about.
Yeah, you're right. We should just put that in the calendar.
Yeah, I'll put it in the calendar and we'll probably find something to go off of that.
Perfect.
Okay, Morgan. Well, that was good. I loved it.
Thank you.
I loved it so much. Logan texted me and said, "Can you go check on the stove and make sure I let Nona inside?" So.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Give me 2 seconds.
Probably go.
I'm out of breath from climbing the stairs. Okay. Today I'm going to be covering a case that let me give you the backstory. So last night I was watching Bloodline Detectives on Peacock, which is produced by and hosted by Nancy Grace. I was just like going through and picking random episodes that I didn't know the case about. But this is a show that's dedicated to cases that were solved by genetic genealogy. It's really, really cool. But before anyone goes and watches it, I really don't think that they do a good enough job, in my opinion, at forewarning survivors of sexual assault or rape what this is about, because the majority of the cases on the 4 or 5 seasons are sexual assault cases, and some are with survivors and others are not. So when we have the survivors, like, they walk us through each step of a rape kit. Now in the future, I am going to cover one of these cases because, and maybe in, you know, the rather soon future, only because I never really have taken the time to like walk through it and learn exactly what happens in the process of it. And no one's ever, it's like not public, you know, and it's because it's a really upsetting thing to talk about. But I think that it's really important for people to understand what the process is, because I think the majority of people would be more likely to go to a rape crisis center if something ever were to happen to them. Right. And I think it would make it a little bit more approachable if we were all educated on what the process is and what it's like and da da da. So I'm going to do that in the future. But anyways, I was watching this show, come across season 3, episode 3, and it's this case. And it was so shocking that it immediately captured my attention, but also because of the fact that I had never once heard of this case before. This is the case of Carla Walker that touched me on truly such a spiritual level that I immediately jumped out of bed. I was watching this at 11:30 last night, and I came up here and I spent like hours last night, didn't go to bed till like 3, researching this case so that I could scrap the original case I had planned for today and do this one, because I wanted people to hear it. And I'm going to use that case soon that I was originally going to do in Patreon. I was talking to you guys about it on my little phone call with you, but my primary source for this case is obviously Bloodline Detectives, but also NBC Dateline and several other interviews and various articles from Carla's family, specifically her younger brother. And of course I have like a long laundry list of all the sources, but those are I wanted to give credit to those because they were the basis of my research. Anyways, let's jump into it. Carla Jan Walker was born on January 31st, 1957 in the Fort Worth, Texas area to Leighton and Doris Walker as one of their 6 children. The Walkers were a very kind and well-regarded family within Tarrant County. They were a good family, with Leighton and Doris standing as the pillars of this loving household. Carla was a very kind and well-loved girl at Western Hills High School, where she was an exceptional student and a cheerleader. Those that knew her described to be super friendly, bubbly, and passionate about animals. The youngest Walker child, Carla's little brother Jim, said it was like she had this special connection with animals because of her gentle spirit. It was as if the animals knew they could trust her just by, you know, reading her aura, and she trusted them too, which is why it was no surprise to anyone
Snow White.
that she planned, exactly Snow White, that she planned to become a veteran, a veterinarian after graduating high school. She was truly a light that would brighten up anyone's day. And also Carla had this boyfriend named Rodney that everyone knew they would probably get married because of their amazing, really young, but like old soul type of love with each other. Not to mention the fact that they were truly living out the most classic Texas all-American dream because she was a cheerleader and he was the quarterback. In a Texas high school.
Texas?
Yeah. She was the bright and bubbly one, and he was more of the quiet, reserved, but very kind, gentle one as well. On Saturday, February 16th, 1974, 17-year-old Carla and 18-year-old Rodney got all dressed up in their nicest clothes, and they attended the Western Hills High School Valentine's Day dance. Because it was a special night, a special occasion, and with Carla just recently turning 17, like her birthday was like 16 days earlier, Layton and Doris Walker agreed to extend her curfew a bit within reasonable, like 2 a.m. Get home around 2 a.m., which was like into the early morning hours of February 17th.
That's a nice curfew.
That is.
My mama would have said, it's still 11.
And it's 11, yeah. But they did this so that way they could celebrate her birthday and Valentine's Day and get to go to the dance. And like also I think he was a senior and she was a junior. So it was like their last like school dance together other than prom obviously and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the plans after the dance were crazy.
Crazy. So they just wanted them to enjoy their time together and with friends. Now after the dance, Rodney and Carla, they went to the local bowling alley with their friends. They hung out there for a few hours, but it started to get late, like it was getting past midnight, when the couple decided that they were going to split off from their friends so that they could get some alone time before Carla was due home. So they walk out to the car in the parking lot, they get in, and after both getting into the car, Carla slides over to Rodney, and the two did as like any teenage couple would after the Valentine's Day dance, and they started making out. Now the two had kind of shifted away from the driver's seat because it was like, the bench in the front, you know what I mean? Yes. So they slid across it so they wouldn't be near the gears, and obviously it's like chilly because it's February, so they had to have the car on for some heat. They like kind of slide over to the passenger seat, and Carla has her back leaning up against the passenger side door, and this is when the door swings open. It all happened so fast that it wasn't really registering to either of them what was happening. Like Carla was trying to pull herself back up in the car, and Rodney very quickly is like grabbing her so she won't fall backwards out of it. And in that split second, assuming that they had just like unlatched the door by accident, they're kind of like, whoa, like, you know what I mean? She's pulling herself back up. Rodney's grabbing her so she won't fall out. And as he's like leaning down to get her, he looks up outside of the car, like standing outside of the door. He sees in the little light that there was in this parking lot, a man. He is pulling Carla out of the car towards him, and he quickly hits Rodney over the head with his pistol. Rodney's bleeding, confused. He's just been pistol whipped. But by the time Rodney and Carla are realizing like what's happening, that Rodney's just been hit, there's a man here and he's pulling me out, Carla was already like pretty much out of the car at this point. Now Rodney is just like leaning, like lunges forward to grab her with his blood getting all over her dress, and he's like holding onto her dress when he looks up again, and directly in his face is the barrel of this pistol.
Oh my God, that's got to be fucking terrifying.
The man then says to Carla, "You're coming with me, aren't you, sweetie?" She says, yes, just don't hurt him. Please don't hurt him. Please stop. And then the man turns to Rodney and says, "I'm going to kill you," and pulls the trigger once, twice, and for a third time. But the gun was not firing. With Carla still begging the man that's holding her hostage to just leave Rodney alone, the man hits Rodney over the head with the pistol once again as hard as he can, knocking Rodney unconscious, busting his skull open. But before Rodney went completely down, because he's still trying to fight passing out so he can get to Carla as she's being dragged away, he hears Carla yell out to him one last time, saying, "Rodney, go get Dad." Sometime later, we aren't sure how long Rodney was out, he regains consciousness. He is covered in blood. It's running down his face from his head. His hands are slipping in it on the, seat as he's trying to set himself up. He's so dazed. He's so confused. And then all of these memories come flooding back. He jumps up, and all he can hear echoing in his mind is Carla's voice, "Go get Dad." She is not there. She is not in the parking lot. She's not anywhere. Carla was gone. Rodney throws the car in drive and he peels out, speeding as fast as he can to the Walker's house. Jim, the youngest Walker child, who was 13 at the time, remembers hearing this like loud scraping sound echoing through their home just before 2 a.m. I think it was like 1:42 a.m. on the now 17th that they hear this like loud scraping echoing sound echo through their house. So Leighton and Doris yell out to the kids that are in the house like, what was that? Thinking that it came from inside. But then within seconds of saying that, they hear a car door and Rodney screaming for Leighton. He's pounding on the door screaming, Mr. Walker, help me. They've got her. They're going to hurt her bad. I know they are. Please help me. Mr. Walker, Leighton, swings it open, pulls Rodney inside. And this is the first time that Rodney even knows that he's as injured as he is and anyone is seeing him. He is covered in blood, like running, like you can't even see because it's running in his eyes so bad. He had been beaten, and Leighton and Doris are frantically trying to get him inside as he continues screaming, they've got her. We were in the parking lot at the bowling alley and this man came up and he pulled her out of the car. I think he shot me. Mr. Walker, who was a World War II veteran and Korean veteran, immediately switches into action mode. It was like second nature. He grabs his gun and he hears that bowling alley in the parking lot. Okay. He walks out of the door, jumps in his car, and he peels out, leaving Doris, who immediately is equally in action mode, to call 911. Meanwhile, the Walker children that were still in the home at this point are cleaning up Rodney, trying to figure out where his injuries are to try to stop the bleeding. And he's just frantic, but at the same time in shock because he's kind of losing that adrenaline that got him there. And police respond to the bowling alley where they meet Mr. Walker, while the other units, along with some ambulance, rush over to the Walker home to help Rodney and get all the information that they could as they're rushing him to the hospital. Rodney tells the officers the entire story as best as he could. He says that his last memory was of Carla telling him to go get her dad and then yelling at the man to stop hurting Rodney as she's being pulled away. And the only thing that Rodney could describe this man to be was a white man that he didn't know or had never seen before and was approximately 5'10". But truly, that's all that he could see of him in that dark parking lot as he's getting pistol whipped in the car while this man's outside of the car holding Carla to kind of block himself. So in the parking lot of the bowling alley, the police and Mr. Walker located Carla's purse that had fallen out of the car, as well as a magazine for a pistol. But that truly was all the evidence that they were able to collect at the crime scene. They began looking into all of the men that fit this description in Carla's life. They performed area searches for any more potential evidence, and they start blasting Carla's name, face, and story around the Fort Worth area to try and generate some leads as fast as they can. Several law enforcement agencies came in to assist on Carla's kidnapping, including the city of Fort Worth, the Tarrant County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, and the Texas Rangers, along with neighboring counties that came to help. And in addition to those men in Carla's life that they were looking into, they also were looking into any and all sexual predators that were registered within the area, sending officers to go to their homes and do welfare checks to essentially be like, what are you doing?
Right.
Let me see your hands. Exactly. While in the meantime, other agencies began looking into any other kidnapping cases of young women in the surrounding area that dated back several years to see if they could make any possible connections that could lead them to finding Carla before it was too late. But from the jump, their primary suspect was, of course, Rodney. Despite the fact that he had passed several polygraph tests, when he underwent hypnosis, he said the same exact story, and he was genuinely a victim himself in this, and even the Walker family was on his side, literally allowing him to stay in Carla's room for at least 2 months following this ordeal because it was helping him grieve and them grieve together. But he was just recovering from his injuries and the trauma of all of this, meanwhile being considered a suspect.
Yeah, that's actually crazy.
Though all of the questioning and pointing of fingers came not only from investigators, but also from the scumbags in the community that...
Yeah, I can imagine it.
Yeah, despite all of this, Rodney continued to be cooperative with police and did every single thing that he could in his power to help them in their investigation, even from his hospital bed, even from his girlfriend's bed that he just watched get abducted. And finally, investigators made a connection to a second case that happened almost a year to the date prior. This helped them move their focus from
away
Rodney,
from
making it to where he's not the primary suspect, but he's still a person of interest. So this is the case that they connected to him. On February 7th, 1973, just 1 year and 1 week prior to Carla's abduction, a 21-year-old woman named Becky Martin was abducted out of her car in the parking lot of her school, Tarrant County College. It would take several months, but Becky's body would later be found located in a culvert under a secluded road. So for those who don't know, because I had never heard them be called this, I don't know what I thought they were called, but it definitely wasn't a culvert. But essentially what it is it's a cattle culvert, which is pretty much a concrete structure that is tall enough for a full-grown man to be able to like stand up inside and move around uncomfortably, because it's used as tunnels for cattle so they can cross under roads instead of crossing over roads. Now, due to the similarities in which both Becky and Carla were abducted, investigators felt that the two cases had to be connected in some way. So the two people that made this connection were like, if y'all don't believe us, we believe ourselves, we're going to make this happen. So these two Fort Worth Police Department officers that made this connection immediately went out and began searching every single one of the secluded road culverts that they could find within a certain radius away from the crime scene. And they started by focusing on this area that surrounded Benbrook Lake. They were driving down Pearl Ranch Road, which had tons of culverts on it. So they were just stopping at every single one that they saw and like peeking their heads into them. Now, after several stops, it was around 6:30 p.m. on February 20th, and they were, getting to the end of their day. And so they're like, all right, we'll just stop at one more. And just 3 days after Rodney had showed up covered in blood, banging on the Walker's door in the early morning hours of February 17th, the two officers spotted the lifeless body of a woman lying in one of these culverts. And they just immediately knew that it had to be Carla. They called in their discovery, and units began responding to the area so that they could get a proper photo ID comparison before alerting the family, while simultaneously, because, everyone pretty much already knew that this was Carla, sending officers towards the Walker's house so that they could break the horrific news once the photo ID
before the media
exactly was confirmed. But this did not go to plan. Because of the widespread coverage on Carla's case, journalists and editors for, news channels, newspapers were glued to their police scanners. They were listening in for any and all breaks as police communicated about their progress in the investigation and the searches, meaning they heard the call come through about the discovery of Carla the second that she was found. Before the Fort Worth police officers that were sent to the Walker's house could get there, several news crews began making their way to the house. Now, there had been several that had just been camping out there because it had been 3 days, and, that's what they did back then. So they had been camping out there, but it started to get a little crowded.
This is only 3 days after her abduction.
3 days after her abduction.
Okay, I thought we were months, but you're saying the boyfriend just ended up staying there for
months.
Yeah,
he ended up staying there for months. That was me just talking, about that situation. So it starts kind of getting crowded. So more news crews than regular at 6:30 p.m. on a whatever day of the week this was. The Walkers start to notice, like, okay, something's up, but they didn't know anything yet. So they kind of go outside and are just like seeing what people are going to say to them, not necessarily talking, but just being there. Obviously, like a crowd kind of forms around the front porch, and they're being asked, like, has there been any developments? But thankfully, the new crews that were there were not saying anything. If they knew anything, they were going to wait on the police. But Mr. and Mrs. Walker are standing outside on the front porch when a woman from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram pushes her way through the crowd to the front and stands 10 toes down in front of the Walkers, blurting out, "Mr. and Mrs. Walker, what are your feelings? What do you think happened now that they have found your daughter's body?"
She should go to jail.
Immediately, the Walkers turned around and walked back inside their house where their surviving children were, and just had tears in their eyes. It was the first time that all of the kids ever saw their father's eyes well up. Meanwhile, a man grabbed that reporter lady and escorted her off the property, quote, strongly encouraging her to never come back, as everyone else just sat in complete shock at this woman's audacity. Not even a minute later, after this woman was escorted off, officers from the Fort Worth Police Department and Tarrant County Sheriff's Department arrived at the house to officially notify the Walkers of Carla's discovery. They informed the family that they would need to make an in-person positive ID on Carla that evening once she was taken to the coroner's office and kind of cleaned up a bit prior to the full autopsy taking place. So later that night on February 20th, the Walkers were taken down to the medical examiner's office, which was in the basement of a downtown Fort Worth hospital. And both Mr. and Mrs. Walker were taken into a room where Carla's body was, leaving their surviving children outside of the room to wait. Jim, the youngest son, remembered that within 20 seconds, this is so upsetting. Jim, the youngest son, remembered that within 20 seconds of his parents walking into that room, all he could hear was, quote, that guttural, deep moan of a scream that a mom would have when she sees her baby is dead. It was his mother screaming. It was primal, and it stopped everyone that heard it in their tracks.
That's so sad.
And like, I can hear it. You know, it's like in me.
I know this is so like off topic here, but I heard last night, I was watching Landman. It's a new Texas oil. It's like Yellowstone, but with the oil field. Someone died. They had to go to the mother and, you know, let them know that their son has passed. And the actor, I mean, her scream sent chills through my body. I looked at Erin and I said, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
I was like, that was the most gut-wrenching scream I have ever heard. So realistic.
Right. Like, and that, you know, when I was writing these notes and I was on that section of the notes, I was like typing this out and like sobbing as I'm typing this out because it's just like, it's in me. I don't ever want to hear it outside of my body, but I hear it in me. Like I don't even have to question. If I ever heard it, I would know it, you know, like, oh, makes me sick. Also, side note before we move on, because I'm really trying to not let myself cry. I don't know if you guys have seen that what people are teaching their kids now is if they're ever in trouble is just scream mom.
Mom, I did see that.
And I was thinking about that like hard whenever I was on this section of it. And I thought, oh my God, you're right. I'm not even a mom. If I ever heard someone scream mom, I would turn around. Like it would stop me in my tracks. It would send a cold chill down my spine and I would have to go. When I hear a baby scream, like, you know, not like a fussy baby scream, but like a I'm hurt scream, it stops me.
Yeah.
It was immediately clear to the naked eye from the second they spotted Carla in that culvert that she had died a horrifically brutal death. So trigger warning, because I'm going to get into the details of this and it is a bit disturbing. She was laid back on her back, splayed out with her legs open and her dress ripped from the bodice down. Her dress had been pulled up and was lying on either side of her. From the top of her dress to the bodice seam was also ripped, with her bra ripped and pulled up. Her dress was covered in blood that was primarily Rodney's from where he was trying to pull her back into the car after being hit. And she had several deep, horrific contusions on her face specifically, but also her entire body, her legs, with very apparent signs of strangulation marks on her neck. The autopsy revealed that Carla was kept alive for 2 days following her abduction, periodically being injected with morphine. She was tortured, beaten, raped, assaulted, and then eventually strangled to death. Forensics teams preserved all of her clothing, all of the jewelry, which was still on her. It wasn't taken off of her. Her shoes even. They swabbed her entire body and even were able to collect samples of bodily fluids from the crime scene and her remains. Also from the crime scene where Carla was discovered, investigators collected as many dirt clots and earth samples that they could get, along with any and all trash, bottles, cigarette butts that they could find. But with it being 1974, you know, before DNA and before lots of technology, the only piece of evidence that would allow them to move forward in this investigation was that magazine found in the bowling alley parking lot. Mainly because the investigators theorized that this attacker really had no idea that he had even lost his mag or how, which they realized was from when he hit Rodney over the head with the pistol. It just knocked it out. And they were able to tell from this magazine that this wasn't just any pistol that this attacker had. It was a really unique make and model of a gun. It was a Ruger 22 caliber Mark I model pistol with a magazine release on the bottom of the grip, which is like a big piece of this case. So with this discovery, investigators were able to use it to narrow down their search efforts for their suspect. They made a list of all white men that fit Rodney's description that were known offenders in the area or within Carla's life, and then they pulled the records of anyone that has a registered Ruger 22 caliber Mark I model pistol in the area. And so they cross-reference these lists, pulling people that had a connection to Carla, that had a gun to the top of the list, that had this specific gun to the top of the list. Anyone that was a previous offender that had the specific gun to the top of the list. Anyone that had this gun, though, in the area was on the list, no matter what.
Well, that explains why whenever he went to shoot it,
it didn't come out. So they're comparing these lists, and they're creating a list of persons of interest primarily centered around the owners of this specific make and model of the gun. Meanwhile, other teams were sent to Carla's funeral, with the FBI theorizing that the suspect would potentially show up. So they set up a camera, and they made it to where anyone that was attending the funeral before entering the building would have to pass by the open casket in the family. And after investigators, along with the FBI, combed through so they recorded them as they did this, they combed through every single piece of this footage to look for any and all behavioral changes from those that walked by her body. Now, finally, using all this information in the list that they had created, investigators began looking into each and every single one of these men on their list. The first person that they were able to very quickly and not officially, but for the most part, rule out as their primary suspect is Rodney.
That's crazy because he's in the hospital.
He
probably
passed
at least
polygraphs
for 2 days.
Right.
And then Carla was alive for 2 days. So how would he have done that?
Exactly. That's what's crazy to me. So they were like, we can't say that he didn't do it. And it's like, yeah, we can. He was in the hospital, and then he was at the Walker's house.
Right.
And where would he get morphine?
Right.
They were able to rule him out. So investigators weren't looking into him anymore, but that didn't stop, the talk of the town. Anyways, this led Rodney to pretty much being forced to leave after graduating from high school so that he could try and start recovering and healing and leading a new life. And this was really upsetting for the Walker family because they truly thought of him as a son, and he felt the same way about them. However, everyone knew it was for the best that he left. Even the police were like, yeah, you shouldn't. Go and start over. And he had done everything in his power to help, but really at this point it was all in police's hands. One by one, investigators interviewed each of the owners of these registered Ruger pistols in the area, running tests on the guns, getting alibis for the owners, and clearing them one by one. For the most part, the majority of the registered pistols were accounted for. However, there were a few instances where the gun was no longer in possession of the person that was registered to. Some had lent it to a family member or a friend to keep for protection. Others had sold it and were able to track where they sold it down, but there were a few that were misplaced or stolen. And in those instances, a formal report would be filed so it could be saved into records, and those individuals were administered polygraph tests. Even if they passed, though, which every single one of them passed, they would still remain on the list, not be kind of like Rodney. We can't officially rule you out, so we're going to leave you on here. They were just kind of moved to the bottom. Now, unfortunately, Carla's case went cold. No matter what investigators did, the case just kept going cold. One of the things that they prided themselves on, though, is the fact that no matter how much time had passed, they always followed through on every single lead that they got in Carla's case. Because this case was personal. It personally affected every single person that touched it. They refused to give up, and even when Carla's case was cold, it was technically still a little bit active. It stayed like this for 46 years, though.
Oh my God.
Almost weekly, but primarily monthly, the Walkers would call and check in on the detectives that were assigned Carla's case at the time. And even when Mr. Walker passed away in 1987 and Doris passed away in 2015, Carla's siblings took over and they continued to check in periodically. Specifically, the youngest son, her youngest brother, Jim, as you can tell because I've referenced him plenty of times in this, he was the one that kind of took over for his parents. In 2019, Carla's case was officially handed over to the Fort Worth Cold Case Unit, and the first thing that they did was take it to Detective Paul Holes for a review. This is the absolutely legendary investigator that played a very large role in cracking the Golden State Killer case through his investigation and also DNA and genealogy. Despite being retired from law enforcement and not even from Texas or in Texas, he agreed to review the case and met with the Walkers and the detectives that year. And after hearing their story in 2019, he was so touched that he wanted to be formally brought in on Carla's case because he believed that it was solvable. They had saved so much evidence. There has to be something. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Paul Holes, like I said, he was retired from law enforcement, but he was working for a TV show where they would consult on cold cases. And this allowed him access to unlimited funding and access to some of the best, top-notch, and newest forensic technological DNA advancements testing methods at the time. So he reaches out to the Fort Worth PD after meeting with the Walkers and the cold case unit, and he asked if he could be granted access to the evidence in Carla's case for potential testing. And they agreed, but they said, if you're going to do this, you're funding it. And he said, okay, I will. And Oxygen Network agreed too. And just like that, Carla's case was up and moving once again. Paul Holes had all of Carla's clothing and all the evidence that had been collected sent to a lab in California's Bay Area, which happened to be the same one that he used to solve the Golden State Killer. And miraculously, they were able to identify 2 samples of male DNA, one on her dress and one on her bra strap, that had been missed in the original examinations. When ran in CODIS, though, there were absolutely 0 matches. So they agreed to send off the dress sample specifically, because it was the largest one, to be tested at a genealogy lab that worked with Holes in the Golden State Killer case, which to me sounds like Parabon with C.C. Moore, but I'm not totally sure on that. Either way, everyone is anxiously awaiting for the results to come back, but they're thinking like, I mean, they solved the Golden State Killer, like C.C. Moore, you know, right. Like we got high chances, but their spirits were crushed when they learned that they were unable to get a result that would allow genealogical testing. And even worse, they had consumed the entirety of the one of the 2 samples, the larger of the 2 samples that they had. It was completely gone.
Damn. I mean, that is the risk you take, though.
That is, because DNA, like, testing is destructive. It takes everything from it. You can't get it back, you know? But they thought, with this being the biggest of the 2 samples, that, and this being Parabon, and again, I'm not positive that's Parabon, but I'm pretty positive that's the one that did the Golden State Killer connection. Anyways, they are only left now with one singular and the smaller, very fragile sample of Carla's killer's DNA.
On the bra strap.
On the bra strap. Okay. That's all that they have left now. Leaving the Fort Worth cold case detectives, Detective Wagner and Bennett, very cautious about allowing any more testing to be done until, with the current technologies that they had in 2019. They were like, we'd honest to God rather just wait. There'll be a day that you guys can just scan this with a thing that looks like a gun and tell me who it belongs to. Exactly. So we could just hold out on this one. So this forces them to return back to old-fashioned police work in the meantime. And for what felt like the 700th time, they strip this case back and they start over from the beginning. They use the original person of interest list from the initial investigation to form a new list of individuals that they considered high priority from these lists. But this list was over 50 names. These 2 knew Carla's case front to back, back to front, and they knew that if they wanted it to be solved, they were going to have to take another leap of faith, because they felt it in their bones that it was one of these names. They knew that the old-fashioned detective works that they had done in 1974 was true. Like, it's tried and true. So they were like, the person's name is in this file. Right. We know it. And they were like, we're so close. We could take a leap of faith and allow this last sample to be tested.
Oh, I'd be so scared.
But, that's if we want to solve it right now. As they're debating on this, they get another call. And it's from Paul Holes once again. He reaches out to them in 2020 and he says, look, a new lab reached out to me about doing some work with us, and I think they can do this for you. I think they could successfully produce a genealogical sample from the bra strap, small DNA sample, if you will let me agree to this. And they said, okay, don't let us down, Paul Holes. Legendary.
Don't let us down, Paul.
Don't fuck it up, Paul. There's my fuck. Wagner and Bennett felt like this was their best shot to produce at least one new lead. And it made them feel a little bit better about the fact that they were able to tour the facilities, meet with the founders of the lab, because it was literally in their state. It was in Texas. And this is Othram Labs. It was founded by married couple David and Chris. My hand is shaking because of having to hold this mic. I have to switch hands. I'm so sorry. So the lab was founded by married couple doctors David and Kristen Middleman. It is the first lab in the world that was built to use the most advanced genomic techniques to identify victims and perpetrators in specifically true crime cases.
Wow.
It only works on crime cases. That's it. Othram was able to solve several cases with even less of a sample than the bra strap that dated back to the 1800s.
Holy shit.
So after hearing this and seeing the facilities, all right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
You're in Texas. We trust you. You guys are cool.
You're a local.
They graduated from Baylor School of Medicine. Like, all right.
Yeah.
It's so Texas it hurts. Come on. Bring it to me. So though Wagner, Bennett, and even Paul Holes were all skeptical individually about this, they knew that Kristen and David would be careful and very, very smart with this final sample. And thank God that they trusted them, because it was a success. Once identifying the most valuable and well-preserved DNA sequence off of the bra, they used Ancestry DNA to compare the genome and narrow down what bloodline or family line it belongs to through this thing called GEDmatch. And pretty much they just figured out who has the most similar DNA to this sample. Then they used the bloodline or family that they were able to identify to connect who in that bloodline or family has the most similar blood to this sample. So it's like, who has the most similar family bloodline? Okay, now who in this bloodline has the most similar to this?
And now who was in this area?
Exactly. And so then once they do that, they pull public records and social media records to narrow down who in that specific part of this bloodline family lived in or around or near Fort Worth, Texas in 1974. And then they finally narrowed down the search to individual people of interest within that family or bloodline. After 5 weeks of processing on the GED machine or GEDmatch, the sample is completed and they get the final workup. So the people in the lab stay up all night comparing all of this, and they were able to very quickly narrow it down. The lab immediately called the Middlemans to tell them what they had found, because it was the reason why they're not in the office doing it themselves, because A, it was a Saturday, but B, it was the 4th of July 2020. And pretty much they tell the Middlemans when they call them, like, hey, sorry to call you on a Saturday, double sorry to call you on the 4th of July, but we know who did it.
That's crazy.
And
it's also crazy it takes 5 weeks on a machine.
I know. But also, like, it only takes 5 weeks.
True.
Like, that's crazy compared to 46 years in this entire case.
Right.
5 weeks. And we're like, oh, okay, this little tiny piece of shit
we're
sample.
Like, that's too long. Why isn't it 5 hours?
Exactly. It should take 2 seconds, you know? So call the Middlemans and they're like, look, dude, we think we have, actually, we know. We can give you 5 names. And so they were like, okay, send it over to us right now. So they go inside from being outside with their families and they pull it up on their computer and they look at it and they agreed. It was obvious that they had who did this. So immediately the Middlemans pick up their phone and they call Detective Jeff Bennett from the cold case unit in Fort Worth. And he answers the phone within seconds, because seeing their name pop up on his phone, he knew it was going to be good news. On a Saturday, on a holiday, you're only calling me with good news.
Right.
Instantly, they start walking Detective Bennett through the bloodline. And as they are getting to the family, they say the surname for the first time, because, you know, they're like, it's from this haplogroup and da-da-da-da-da. And then we were able to trace it. And then we found the surname McCurley. Detective Bennett immediately cuts him off and he says, I know that name. It was a name that had been in Carla's case file since day one. It was a name that he had marked as number 22 on his persons of interest list on the brand new one he had just made. Bennett grabs his binder on Carla's case that he kept in his home office so that he could get the full name. And he asked David Middleman, is his name Glenn Samuel McCurley? And David says, yes. We have it down to Glenn Samuel McCurley, but the issue is that he died in 1972. 2 years before Carla was murdered. So Bennett says, there's got to be a junior. And they said, okay, let me look. Sure as shit.
There's a junior.
Of the 3 McCurley sons that belonged to Glenn Samuel McCurley Sr., Glenn Samuel McCurley Jr. was the only one that lived in Fort Worth in 1974 and still lived there. The other 2 lived, one overseas, the other one lived in like the Midwest or something. I don't know. It was the same man that had a 22 Ruger Mark I model pistol registered to him that police went and interviewed in 1974, who actually had only been semi-cleared, never officially cleared by the original detectives, only because he passed a polygraph test. However, when going back through the file, Bennett put him back on the list simply because of the circumstances surrounding this Ruger. McCurley was the only person of all of the registered gun owners of this specific pistol that had a really odd story surrounding the location of his. So back in 1974, when detectives arrived at the then 31-year-old McCurley's front door and interviewed him about his gun, he tells them, oh my God, actually thank God you guys are here, because like 6 weeks ago, so 6 weeks prior to Carla's murder, someone stole my Ruger out of my truck.
Crazy.
It was crazy. But the detectives knew from the records that he had purchased a brand new magazine for his 22 caliber Ruger pistol between the time that it was allegedly stolen and when he spoke with police. So they were like, so if you don't have the gun, if it was stolen 6 weeks ago, then why 2 weeks ago did you buy another mag for it? And he's like, oh my God. Well, first off, I was just in the gun store looking to see if someone had traded it in, and I saw this mag and it had a really good deal on it. So I bought it. And the reason why I bought it is because if I couldn't find my Ruger, I was just going to buy myself a new one. Okay.
Damn.
Which they found odd enough that back in 1974, they decided to bring him in for the polygraph and the interrogation, both of which he obviously passed, forcing the original detectives, because that was really all that they had to work with, because it's 1974, to move on from him, but, not take him off the list completely, but just move him to the bottom of it. In 2020, McCurley was living with his wife in Fort Worth area still, and he was 77 years old. So the first thing that they did was send a patrol officer over to the house to perform a, quote, welfare check, saying that one of the neighbors called it in at the McCurley's house just so they could confirm that he was still living and that him and his wife were living there. And they did. Then on July 7th, 2020, so again, they got the calls of the results and got his name on the 4th. This is the 7th, okay? Yeah. The 7th of July, 2020, detectives sent officers in the middle of the night to the McCurleys, where they picked up everything that was in the trash bins on the side of the curb that they had set out for waste management to come pick up the next day, which we know makes it a legal collection of a covert DNA sample, because if you don't know this, I've said it before, we're going to say it again. The second you put that shit on the curb, it is now public property.
Yep.
So anyone can take anything out of your trash can, anything that you have near your trash can, people can take, and police can come get your DNA from it. If you're running from the law, I guess, jot that one down.
Yeah, if you need your DNA hidden,
I guess.
Don't use the trash can ever.
Ever,
Shred it all, burn it.
Shred it all. I'm just kidding. Actually, that's a lie. So detectives sent officers in the middle of the night to go pick up this this trash bin and bring it, start going through all of the items in it with gloves. They bring it back to the lab and they're going through it. They get out, cans, straws, to-go cups, boxes, etc. And the ones that didn't seem to be contaminated with liquid or whatever, they sent off for testing at their local lab, which if you're watching the documentary, they call it Siri. That's the name of the lab, but it kept throwing me off. So I'm just going to call it the damn lab. So they sent it off to the lab for testing. And this took a few months because obviously when you're testing samples from the trash can, there's going to be a lot of DNA in that trash can. So it takes them months to go through it all. Also, it's in 2020. So again, prolonging
COVID.
The situation. Yeah. So they're having to, find all the samples that they can in this trash and figure out which one belongs to Glenn Samuel McCurley. Finally, months later in early September of 2020, mid-September of 2020, the results come back. They found a match to the bra sample. So with this discovery, investigators were able to get a warrant and came up with a plan of attack for getting McCurley. They decided that they wanted to do this slow and easy because he had no idea that they were on his tail. And they wanted to interview him in his living room with his wife present due to their age, and also to make, based off of the profile that they had created on him, they wanted to not tip him off in any way, shape, or form that he was a suspect. And so they knew if they allowed his wife to be in the room at the home, that he wouldn't think it was that big of a deal. So they kind of went in with the story that they were just revisiting the case. They were the cold case unit, and they were re-interviewing any single person that had been interviewed initially in the case. And he was on that list, just so that they could get him talking in a consensual type interview that he was comfortable. Both McCurley and his wife, but specifically his wife, I love his wife, were extremely kind and welcoming to Wagner and Bennett as they came in to interview them. They open up their home. They're offering, can we get you something to eat? Can we get you something to drink? Are you warm? Are you comfortable? You want to sit in a different chair? And made Wagner and Bennett feel really, really comfortable and welcomed inside their home. And at first, both McCurley and his wife were extremely forthcoming and helpful until Wagner and Bennett kind of started getting more specific with the detailed questions that they were asking. And at this point, McCurley begins to start holding back a little bit more and seeming to get uncomfortable, but his wife was just the opposite. She's like, oh my God, well, I never knew that. Let me help you. Let me think. And trying to, really genuinely help out these investigators. She was sharp as a tack, and she was answering every single question and even correcting her husband when he would misspeak. Honestly, I feel like she was just like a true crime girly because of everything that she said and the way that she spoke on the tapes that they have. And you can listen to the tapes on Bloodline Detectives. That's the only place I was able to really listen to them for an extended amount of time. But either way, an example of this is when Bennett asked McCurley, what were you doing the week of Valentine's Day 1974, which was the week that Carla was abducted and murdered. And he says, well, my wife has never driven, so I was probably running her all around, picking her up from work, me going to work, so back and forth. So we were always together during this time. At which point Mrs. McCurley chimes in. She says, no, honey, that's not right. The week of Valentine's Day in 1974, when that little girl was murdered, and I was out of town because I had gone down with my sister to Middleton, Texas, where my daddy lived. This is when my daddy was living, and he had a surgery that week. So me and my sister went down there. We spent the whole week with my daddy.
We came back and there was that awful news.
Exactly. She was like, I remember it very vividly. That was the week that my daddy had his surgery, and I came back and I learned about all this shit. It was crazy. Basically just blowing his whole alibi right there. So what were you doing? He's like, I was working. I was working. And they were like, okay, well, you know, if you just want to make this easy on us and easy on you, what we've been asking everyone that we're coming back to re-interview in this case is, would you be willing to give an DNA sample? Because that will allow us to eliminate you and move the hell on. Look, we've done this with everyone. You know, it's not just you. Spoiler alert, it's just him. But he's like, well, you know what? I think I actually gave them my DNA back when I did the polygraph. So you should already have it. And immediately, Mrs. Curley pipes up. She goes, no, you didn't, because they didn't even have DNA back in 1974. It wasn't around till the 80s, so there's no way they did that. They didn't even do DNA back then.
Mrs. McCurley.
She truly has no idea. She had no idea. It
kind of breaks
It's
my
really
heart for her,
sad because she had no idea, but it's like kind of so funny in terms of like him, because you know he's like, oh my God, woman.
Yeah.
Shut your damn mouth. Because he obviously doesn't want to tell her. She has no idea. She's just genuinely being helpful.
Yeah.
So it like broke my heart. But at the same time, in his case, it's like your own wife is doing you in, brother.
Yeah.
So yes, bitch, pretty much backing him into the corner, because in front of his wife and detectives, what is he going to say? No, you can't have my DNA.
Yeah.
So you got to give it now. He allows them to swab the inside of his mouth to give a buccal sample, butyl inside your mouth sample. That's what it's called. And they send it off for testing, leaving the house right after getting the sample. And it was compared between both the DNA from the bra sample that created this entire connection to him, solid connection to him, and they also compared it to the straw that they received from the trash can. And 6 days after sending it off, they got the results. It was a match. That day, they got a warrant issued and arrested 77-year-old Glenn Samuel McCurley on September 21st, 2020 at his home in front of his wife and gotten everybody. He was brought back to the office where Bennett and Wagner interrogated him for 2 hours, and he played so dumb for 2 full hours, acting like he had no idea who Carla was, despite the fact that everyone in Fort Worth knew who Carla was.
Yeah.
And not only that, his children went to school with her and all the Walker children. And also, he had been interviewed twice about Carla Walker. Like, this is not something shocking you've never heard of.
And your wife knew who she was, and she wasn't even in town.
Exactly. So they just continue pressing him, and they're like, dude, come on. You're wasting my time. And finally, he breaks down. Like, it was sad because it's like you
see him as this brittle old man now. Yeah.
And it's sad also because he's sitting there and being like, you know, when my wife finds out, you know, like, this is going to kill her. And it's sad because I'm thinking about her. And I also felt the same way about like BTK's family. It was like the kids and her and the wife. And it was like, they just thought he was this good guy. He never had a temper. He was a good guy. He just was a great dad, a great husband.
Right. Never would expect it.
And so it's sad, but in tears, sobbing, with literally these detectives like having to comfort him because he's crying so bad and just like so disappointed in himself as he's admitting this. He says, I abducted, I tortured, I beat, I drugged, and I raped 17-year-old Carla Walker in 1974. And then they are like, what about the gun? And it took a little bit more pressing before he finally said, I have it. It's I hid it in the ceiling of my laundry room. It's between 2 pieces of wood in the ceiling of it, and you can find it there. It's wrapped in a white bag. So they sent investigators over there, and sure enough, there it is. He goes to court. The trial begins in August of 2021, and the second day of the trial, Jim Walker, who is Carla's little brother, walks across the courtroom, beelining towards McCurley's son that was sitting on the other side. And immediately, the DA and the officers in the room perk up and start preparing to have to rush Jim, because in situations like this, normally it's not going to end well. But something kind of made them pause, because it wasn't like a beeline, like I'm going to beat your ass. It was like, I'm coming to talk, you know? So they kind of paused for a minute, and they watched as Jim slowly bent down and began speaking to McCurley's son. And within seconds, tears began pouring down each of their cheeks, and they stood up and they hugged each other as tight as they could as they cried in the middle of the courtroom. Jim said in an interview with Bloodline detectives that all he saw of McCurley's son was just another victim, but just in a different way. McCurley's family had no idea what their dad and husband had done or who he really was, and never would have thought that he was capable of it. They were devastated, and they were so upset, and they were grieving, and they were victims themselves, sobbing just as hard as the Walker family was in the courtroom, which is why Jim decided to go speak with him. He said that God had laid it on his heart to show some compassion and love, just as his parents had taught him to do, and just like the Bible preaches. So that's exactly what he did. That next day, on the third day of trial, McCurley changed his plea to guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. McCurley was imprisoned at the Gibb Lewis unit, which is where he died on July 15th, 2023. And investigators believe that McCurley was involved in several rape and murder cases of young women in the Fort Worth area spanning from the 70s and the 80s, although he has never been charged. And that is the case.
They didn't even attempt to.
I think that first one, they couldn't because there wasn't DNA.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I could be wrong, maybe they did. And they ended up trying them at the same time, but then when he just admitted to it, they gave him the sentence, and so they were like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that does break my heart for his family.
I know. It was so that's why, like, it was Jim Walker, and honestly, like the back and forth of the testing, but specifically Jim Walker, and how it just shows you what truly alike Carla was, that this is how her siblings act, you know. Yeah. And instead of being in the courtroom and being like, I'm gonna kill you, and cussing him up and down, and being like, you know, telling his kids that his dad's a, you know, scum of the earth and doesn't deserve anything, you know, instead of doing that, because quite honest to God, I would be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing that, he shows compassion and love. Like, I was like, damn.
Yeah.
That is.
I don't know if I could do that.
I don't know that I could. 46 years later, her case is solved.
Wow. DNA.
DNA, baby.
Back and bite you.
I mean, I'm telling you, whenever they figure out what's next, y'all should be terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be energy. We're calling it.
Yeah. All of you murderers, don't be sitting too comfortable.
Yeah.
But that is the case of Carla Walker.
It was really good. It was really sad.
Yeah. All of our cameras are blinking, so we got to go.
Love ya.
Love you guys. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Stay for the TFU. That's the second half of the intro. Okay. Why I'm not cussing. So, okay. Anyone that's a podcast listener will understand this. Morgan, I don't know if you will, because you're not a podcast listener. But when I get to the end of an episode of another podcast, very few and far between, I'll like leave crumbs. So like there'll be 15 minutes left. And it's normally just like the outros that I'm not listening to. It's like if I'm listening to a case, I get to the end of the case and I'm like, okay, I can focus on something else now. Mm-hmm. So then I don't like listen to the outros. And about once a month, I'll go through and I'll collect all my little crumbs of 15-minute, you know, little pieces of episodes left. And when there's not a new episode out that I want to listen to, and I'll just back to back listen to all the crumbs and I'll queue them up, you know. The order that I did it yesterday was like, and that's why we drink, Two Girls One Ghost. I had a little bit of Sinisterhood left. I had some of Live Laugh Larceny. I had Ladies and Tangents. I had like a Crime Junkie episode, and it ended up being like the puppy of the month or whatever, and I don't ever listen to those, and then because they're just sad as hell, like to be quite honest, they're so sad. So then, you know, I'm like going through all of them, and I ended on Sophia and Chinzia. And then I didn't realize that it had queued up after Sophia and Chinzia, our show. And, you know, I'm listening to all of them. All these are explicit podcasts. They all say the F word, whatever. I listen to everyone. Well, tell me why it gets to ours and you say the F word, and again, I'm unaffected. I say it. And I immediately realized when I heard my voice, because it was jarring. It was your voice and then it was my voice. Like within 15 seconds. I couldn't even get to the phone fast enough to turn it off. So I didn't have to hear us. So I hear us come on. I'm trying to walk over to the phone. You say the F word with like in 5 seconds. It was like where I had scrolled forward to something to find something in the episode. And then I said it right after. And it like stopped me in my tracks because I realized that like all of y'all's voices, yours included, Sophia and Chinzia, Jerry and Sierra, Sabrina and Corinne, Em and Christine, all of these voices are so just kind voices. And when they say fucking, it just is like, oh, fucking. When I say fucking, it's like I'm damning you to hell. Like I am speaking Latin and I'm performing an exorcism. Like, and it's jarring, and it's because I don't have that like very gentle or soft voice. I was like, yeah, you know what? I would leave a 1-star review if I heard this really intense bitch say fucking as many times as I do. So I'm gonna try it out and I'm gonna see what happens.
I do feel like though when we get fired up, there's just, we don't control it.
We don't, but that's the thing. We weren't even fired up. Like we were just
like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, like we were just being like, and then he fucking did this, and I was like,
my
voice is mean.
My uncle, who I would never ever in a million years would have ever guessed has listened to the podcast.
No, I know which one you're talking about.
Says to me, at Thanksgiving, he's like, yeah, the girls put it on. I was listening to a couple episodes. I'm like, oh.
Oh, good.
I'm like, how'd you like all that cussing?
Literally.
I mean, it's hard for me to hear my niece drop the F-bomb every 10 seconds, but I guess it's something I got to get used to.
You're going to continue listening?
Oh my What do you mean?
Wait, what are you trying to say here? What are you trying to say?
I might talk shit about you.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No, but not really. But we do just be saying stuff.
Yeah.
It is
what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah, it was crazy. That was startling. That threw me for a curveball. And then he was also like really like asking a lot of questions, and Sarah is coming to my defense for everything. I couldn't even get an answer out before Sarah's like, yeah, I mean, it's like really successful and they do ads and stuff, and they have a network and an agent and a manager.
I love when people try to take up for me and Morgan,
and I'm
because genuinely no one knows what goes on with this other than us, unless you're in the industry, because you can't, like, there's no way that we could sit down and explain it to you and it be consistent and like make sense. So when someone like defends us or like wants to like hype us up, it sounds crazy, and I'm like, is that how I sound?
It was so funny. I couldn't even like respond back to questions. She would answer them for me. She does ads. She gets stuff for free.
Sarah. You know that Quince? Yeah, that nice sweater she's wearing.
That sweater that she's wearing.
Those pants that she's wearing.
I have it on. That sweater that she's wearing.
This is all sponsored by Quince. 100%. You know my new little ring set? It was so funny. Quince.
And it wasn't like she was defending me like he was saying like rude things by any means. No, but he was asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And Sarah was like batting for me. I mean, she was just coming through so hard on the answers. It was so funny.
Well, Uncle, if you're listening to this, you should turn it off.
Yeah, and you should shut it off.
You should. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about that.
Me neither. Don't listen.
I just if you know us, don't.
Don't.
I
do want to tell you this. I was sitting at dinner and I did have one of the girls I cheered with growing up, Bethany, and her sister Georgette. They both listen, and their mom listens to Brenda.
Yes.
And we were at dinner, and Brenda, I walked by the table at the restaurant, and she stopped me. She goes, I just have to let you know, this season is the best season ever. She says,
I was not expecting that.
She said, I texted Bethany, her daughter, and she was like, they are so funny this season. It is so good. And Bethany's like, no, this is the best season ever. I know. I said to her, I have to tell Taylar that.
I honest to God would have guessed that everyone was like, this is the worst season that they've ever had.
Yeah.
No.
Brenda doesn't think so. And Brenda's been listening since day one. You know her.
I need someone else to come in with a take. Come in with a take on that and let it be a hot one. Let it be a hot one. Tell us if it's.
All right, don't ask for too much.
No, because I do want to know. I genuinely want to know, because
DM us it.
I never in a million years. Because
don't put it publicly.
If that's the case, I need you guys to tell me right now, because I'm on the verge of scrapping everything. Like, I'm on the verge of starting over, new name. Like, you thought we've done rebrands in the past. Just wait. You know why? I lost 8 followers on Instagram, and it really fucked with me.
I did too.
What is that about?
I think our reels.
Yeah, or pissing people off, which it would piss me off too. But like, sorry, it's the only way to get them up.
Yeah, it's what we got to do.
Yeah,
I'm still above 7 though. That's good for me.
That's good. Yeah, mine just keeps fluctuating. Like, I'll get 8, I'll lose 8. I'll get 8, I'll lose 8. I'm like, this has never happened before.
Yeah,
not since we've had steady growth. And so
I always lose a bunch.
I lost 11 in one day the other day, and I was like, first off, we didn't even post anything that day. I didn't even have a story that day. So I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah, I'm just living. I was living, man. LIVIN.
I wasn't even on Instagram that day. Yeah. Like, what did I say? So yeah.
Well,
that was a crazy time.
It is what it is.
Anyways, because this is a 19-minute intro, what I'm probably going to do is break it off whenever I start going back into after how good your Thanksgiving was, and tell them why I'm going to stop cussing, and put this rest of it at the end. And then I'm going to move this little clip here moving forward back to the beginning. Talk to you guys on Tuesday for TBB. We're going to be filming the new set for December on like Thursday when you're listening to this. So if you have an Ames and it's not 4 p.m. Eastern time,
then you post it on Reddit
you might be able to get it up there, because we're doing Ames first and foremost. Love ya.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.